Hello, everyone. Welcome to another community conversation with HannahJoyTV. We are so honored to be joined by another special guest. That's a duo, of course, a very inspiring couple, community advocates in the Atlanta area, Olga and Hayelom Tadesse. Welcome, Olga and Hayelom.
Hello, my good sister. How are you doing?
So good to see you, my dear brother, my dear sister. I first just want to say thank you all for all the work you do in the community. And it's so good to see y'all. Y'all look fabulous at home. You know what I mean?
You're looking good too, girl. It's a pleasure to be here. Honestly, we thank you. We're honored for this opportunity. And I mean, a great deal of gratitude to you as well. You're doing so much in the community and inspiring so many individuals and absolutely the next generation of leaders as well.
Yes.
Well, I learned from some of the best. So let's go ahead and dive right into it, y'all.
Sure.
We are talking about voting. And we know that today in Georgia, early voting kicked off. But of course, people have been able to submit their votes in by mail, which you all have done. And so today we're going to be talking a lot about voting by mail, absentee ballots. I know we have a lot of questions. It can be complicated, but these two right here have a lot of experience voting by mail. And so let's just dive right into that. Why do y'all choose to vote by mail? And if you can sort of walk us through what that process is like.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've decided, so our voting plan was to really vote by mail, mostly because of COVID, and we knew that there were going to be long lines during the elections. But basically what we've done is the past 2 cycles of voting, we've done absentee ballots. A lot of that is really pushed by the fact that my parents live with us. So they're senior citizens, and so they're more susceptible to COVID. So we wanted to just make sure that as a family and as a block, we were like, let's just focus in on one way of voting and we'll push it through. So when we did absentee ballots, we actually did it during the primaries, and that's how we kind of figured out, all right, these are the instructions for voting by mail, and these are the things that we need to do. Specifically, going online and making sure that you fill out all the applications that's needed for absentee ballots. We did it for all 4 of us. That's including my parents. And we just did that for the primaries, finding out actually that you have to vote, you have to apply every time, which I didn't know. I thought, hey, once I applied, it's automatic. I'm going to be absentee ballot, all my ballots and all elections moving forward. It's not. You have to reapply every time unless you're a senior citizen, and that can be automatically done for you. Then we just waited. I tracked my absentee ballot via my voters page on Georgia, on the Georgia voting site. And that was very important, at least for me, because being slightly paranoid, I was like, I have to check that my registration is there. I have to check that everybody's registration's good, that they've received our application and what's happening and all this stuff. So I was able to track when they actually issued the absentee ballot. When that was done and I was just tracking it, I was able to find when it was issued, then track when I'm going to get it in the mail. And then what we did was filled out our ballots. Yeah. And as I kind of want to explain filling out the ballots, kind of like the DMV. You know how you like wait in line for the longest time, like 2 hours, and then you get to the counter and they're like, actually, you're missing this line. And you're like, mother. So you have to go back and like either wait in line, have to do it again, because there are always like little things that you tend to forget, which is read the instructions carefully. This is kind of like the DMV or applying for your passport. You have to make sure that you read every single dotted line, every single crossed T's, dotted I's, every single thing. So I made sure that I read and reread and reread all the instructions that came with our absentee ballot, made sure that I followed all the instructions correctly, and just filled it in. Then, interestingly enough, there are 2 envelopes that come in your absentee ballots. There is one that you put your actual ballot in, which is normally just like a white envelope or what have you, depending on your state. Then you put it into the larger envelope, which is what you use to mail your ballot in. And that's very important. A lot of people just threw out their ballots and they're like, what's the point of having 2 envelopes? Not throw out the ballots, but what's the point of having 2 envelopes? I'm going to throw this one out. And that can cause your vote to either be discarded or for the registrar to think that it's not 100%, to like 100% that they're going to take it in. So it increases your likelihood of not getting your vote counted. That being said, we read all the instructions, put all the envelopes in, and made sure that our signatures match what we have on our licenses. One of the things to look out for is just making sure that your signature is consistent with a lot of the government documents that you've already filled out. Most importantly, a lot of people have filled out their registration at the DMV. So usually licenses have the signature that you would probably use on your ballot. So looking to make sure that you look at your license for consistency, and then printing out your name as it's printed on the ballot that's been addressed to you is also very important. So what we tried to do was really minimize the risk of our votes being thrown out by just a random thing like, hey, you didn't dot your I or you didn't cross your T. I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember the Gore versus Bush thing in Florida with the hanging chads. That like replays in my head all the time. And I'm like, I don't want my ballot to be a hanging chad. But that's probably like the older folks like us who've already gone through that. So that's our absentee ballot journey. It's a long one.
Yeah.
That is a lot. I mean, let's just be real. It's almost like they make it complicated when it shouldn't be, but even just the simple fact of if the signature doesn't match, your signature, or making sure that, you got 2 envelopes, let's not forget. And for somebody who's never voted by mail for the first time, if I didn't read the instructions, I would have definitely not thought to put the envelope in the other envelope, and so you bring up a really great point about reading the instructions. You've said that, like, I don't even know how many times because it's so important. And B, making sure that you're doing all those little tiny things that make a difference. And speaking of those little tiny things that make a difference, we want to shout out everybody who's watching here with us today. We know people have been in and out and are continuing to come in, and we just want to say thank you for joining us for this conversation about voting, using our voting power, and of course, voting by mail, which is something foreign to a lot of us. And so we have our dear brother and sister, Olga and Hayelom, here today to walk us through that process. If you are watching right now, we'd love to know either what city you're tuning in from so we can get a feel for that. And then also, are you voting? If you're watching this, are you voting? And if you're voting, why is it important to vote? So go ahead and drop a comment and we'll share some of those at the end when we also hear from our brother and sister. And so another thing, right, when we talk about the little things you can do, Dropbox locations, right? They're all over the city. So what's your experience been with those?
I just Googled the nearest Dropbox near me. What we did for this round, we just went to the same Dropbox that we've gone the last 2 rounds of voting, when we voted absentee. So when we voted primaries and when we voted the runoffs, all absentee, we just dropped it off at the same location. So you can just Google it, the nearest Dropbox near me. Dropboxes are secure, and they have cameras everywhere. I didn't know this. One of my friends actually told me this weekend, and I noticed it when we dropped off our ballots this Saturday. So it's very secure. You don't need a stamp if you drop off your ballot at a Dropbox. and you can actually drop it off on the day of the elections by 7 p.m. So versus, thinking through USPS and doing it by mail. I know that there's been a little bit of lag time with our mail. So basically, bottom line, vote early. Do not vote often because that's a felony. But definitely vote early and have a plan.
Yeah, and the other thing, Hannah, that it's important to mention as far as following the direction, and there's a battle happening in Pennsylvania right now. The Trump administration is fighting to be able to toss out any absentee ballots that are considered naked ballot, meaning they've only used one of the two envelopes. And that's why it's really important to make sure that you follow every single instruction that's in front of you, because any one little mistake is going to potentially jeopardize your vote to be counted. And I think what you mentioned earlier as well, Hannah, which is, why do they make it so hard for you to be able to vote? And we all know that voter suppression is real. And to me, that's a testament into showing that your voice is really, really powerful and that it matters. Because if your vote didn't matter, and your voice didn't matter, or if it didn't amount to something, then they would make it as easy as possible. One side is trying to push as many people to go to vote, another side is trying to suppress it. And there's a reason for that. There's rationale, because when the voter turnout is lower, there is a higher probability that the other side is going to win, right? Not trying to choose one or the other, but that's just data, right? And the other thing that's really important too is, putting aside the process of voting, the fact that you should just vote. Find the best method for you. If it is an absentee ballot, do that. If that's the safest way for you to be able to vote. For us, because we have our father and mother-in-law and her parents really that live with us, and we know they're at higher risk, we chose to do the absentee ballot. And then if you are in a state where there are very few states, maybe a dozen or so, or maybe 10, that have universal mail-in ballot, where you don't have to initiate the form, they actually send it to you as long as you're a registered voter. Take advantage of those. Find out what is the best method. And I have a quick message as well for the younger voters, the 18 to 29. Data shows that on average, whether it's midterm or general election, that they have the lowest voter turnout of any population. The 60 and above tend to turn out about 70% of the time. It doesn't matter the cycle. But the 18 to 29, which is now becoming one of the highest population of voters, only show up about 40% of the time on average. The highest they've ever seen was during 2008 for Obama, where we reached about almost a 50%. So think about that. If we had the same amount of voter turnout, the amount of changes we can make, right? If you are somebody who is passionate about education because you think it needs to be reformed, and you're in that age group, if you don't do something, the 16 above are going to decide for you. If you are passionate about, social justice reforms or police brutality, whatever it is, and if you don't vote, then somebody else is going to decide that outcome for you, right? And so we have to understand why it's important to vote. And I'm curious to see what some of the answers are. And if that's not sufficient for you, and you are either a person of color or you're a woman, think about how this country was founded. We have what we call the founding fathers. There's a reason for that, because they were generally all white males, right? The women was not a part of that founding process, nor were people of color. So you have to think about how this system or this, democratic process was designed. It was designed originally with the eyes and the lens of older white men. And so they've designed the system to fit their needs. It's just nature, right? If it was young people who created it, they're going to build the society in the way that they see it. If women were to create it, then they're going to build the society in the way that they see it. So you have to think about the amount of people, especially during the civil rights movement, that died for the right and for the freedom to actually vote. And many of them are alive today. One of the giants who recently just passed away, he nearly got himself killed because he valued his vote and he valued the next generation's vote. And so we have to remember that our vote is so powerful. And the only way we're going to see the change, or we want the country to be in our own image, is if we are involved in the process, right? Sitting on the sideline can no longer be accepted, right? Many young people are now awake and aware And the only way you're going to change the system is you have to bring people into the process that share the same value. And you do that by voting. And your vote is really powerful. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying their hardest to stop it from counting.
Wow. That was a message. I mean, that was so powerful. And you made so many great points about, them trying to stop our votes and trying to silence our voting power, which of course we're not going to allow to happen. And it's the reason why we're having this conversation today, to engage with our community, as we do. And so I just want to touch base again with everyone tuning in. Share a reason right now. If you're watching this in the comment section, just drop a reason. Why are you voting? Why do you plan to vote in this election? Or why did you already vote? You can drop a comment and just share that. And we'd love to read them and hear from you all as well in this community conversation. And so to Olga and Hayelom, our dear brother and sister, we're asking them that question, but we want to turn it over to you all. You all are beloved community members. You all are incredible parents, incredible children of resilient immigrants. There's so many layers to you all and to who you are in this world. And so if we could maybe just start with Olga, and then why don't we then go to Brother Hayelom. Sister Olga, then Brother Hayelom.
All right. To talk about why we're voting. Is that correct? Yes. So one of the things that one of kind of the push in terms of why I push to vote, especially for our family, is that I recognize the path that has been laid out by people of color, but specifically Black people, in terms of that right to vote. And I would be remiss to say that, the reason why immigrants in this country, specifically for me, are successful is because we're on the shoulders of those giants, right? And my vote is a testament to that fight. And it was a very hard fought fight, and we're still dealing with it. And I truly believe that my vote will help create legislation that I care about. Legislation that I care about as a woman, having my rights to be decided by myself and not men. My values of justice reform, my values of clean air and clean water. I want to have a future for my children where they're not feeling the suffocation that's happening on the West Coast. That's not like, oh, hey, there's some trees that are burning. No, it's climate change. And there are, hurricanes all over the place. That's climate change. So I want to be able to live in a country that cares deeply about it, pushes legislation that cares about the people that are going to essentially inherit the country. But most importantly, I don't want to live in fear. As an immigrant and just everything that's happening, right? It's a very, very tense environment. And I do feel that is a pivotal moment for all of us to decide whether or not we are okay living this way, like hunkered down, 7 months in, hunkered down in our houses because we're afraid that someone's going to get sick, and then they're going to bring it to the family, and then the entire family gets sick. We have over 210,000 deaths just from this virus, and it could have been prevented. I miss going to brunch like everyone does. No, I'm just kidding. That's not everybody, but I miss going out. But I can't, because I have to protect this family. So that's why I'm voting, because I want to be able to go outside without a mask on, and have an administration that's going to care about being able to control it.
Wow, Olga, I almost was in tears listening to you. I'm serious. That was a really powerful testimony, and you're so humble. But I tell you, you are a super mom. I mean, you are truly a super mom, still figuring out how to work, while being at home and teaching children and playing with children, and you got young ones as well, and so it's a lot, and you still handle that, and so I respect you so much, and thank you for sharing that powerful testimony that I think is very relatable, because of course we are sad, and we feel for those who we've lost, and we also are human beings where we do miss our communities and our families and our friends in a very human-like way, and so that was just so honest and powerful, and thank you for sharing that. So we'll turn it over to you, Brother Hayelom.
Thank you. That was amazing. You are awesome, by the way.
Thank you, husband.
This is probably the most important question, right? Why it's important to vote. There are several factors, some of which I've shared a few minutes ago. I think the first one is the realization that somebody really literally gave up their life for me to have the right to vote. And when you do the cost benefit analysis, the level of difficulty or ease in order for me to vote versus somebody going out there and sacrificing their lives, leaving their loved ones behind, that's immeasurable. That's really tough to put into words or to measure. And so that's one of the main reasons that motivates me to vote, because somebody else that has no idea who I am, who's never met me, said my voice was more important than their life at that moment in time. And so that's the first reason. The second reason is being, a child of an immigrant parents. They also sacrificed so much for me to be here, to be in the position that I am in, to have the privileges that I have that they were not afforded. And they've given me the privileges that I can pass on to our children, to our family. And so realizing the sacrifice that my parents also made for me to be here, I have to protect the environment that they brought me into, because they brought me here for a reason, because there's so many different benefits that I can gain from it, right? That's the second reason. The third reason is also, our family, as Olga has mentioned. When I think about the future, what kind of environment do I want my kids to grow up in? What kind of society do I want them to be a part of? And if all I do is talk about it and complain about it, then I'm not a part of the change, right? I'm just somebody that's on the sideline. So I have to think about, what is their future like? What do I need to protect for them now so that they don't lose it when they come of age? And also, I grew up in a neighborhood when we moved to the States where we were neglected. Right? Our education system was not well funded. We didn't have access to healthcare. The neighborhoods, they were not well taken care of. And when you think about why that is, I noticed that a lot of the tax dollars that our neighborhoods or our city was generating was being shifted to the suburbs at that point in time. And their schools were well funded. They had some of the best education, some of the best healthcare system. And so one of the main reasons that was taking place is because we were not taught at an early age the importance of voting, how we can change that dynamic and have that paradigm shift. And so it's those type of realization. And also just thinking about what matters to me. Somebody made a sacrifice for me. And if there are things that I hold at value, things that I see as ideal, such as access to healthcare, such as school system where because of the area code that you grew up in, the chances of you graduating or getting out of school or going to college, the system is just played against you. That's not fair. That's not right. And the only way I can do that and pass on the baton to others is by also going out to vote, because just like somebody cared for me, I have to care about somebody else. Who is my neighbor? Who are those children that are up and coming, but no one pays attention to them? And unless we're in that process and changing, whether it is, volunteerism, which I've been privileged enough and I've had, the honor of being able to do that in my community, or if it is by voting. There are so many ways you can make change. You don't have to be a billionaire, right? You don't have to be a mogul to make change. There are, structural changes you can make one step at a time. I mean, those are the kind of things that really motivate me in wanting to make a difference. And the only way to do that is to be a part of that process itself. And so those things that I hold dear and value, I need to make sure I protect them. And by voting, I'm going to do that. And now that I've realized they're doing everything they possibly can to shut me up, not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen. And wow, you also mentioned so many important points there. And thank you for your volunteerism, your leadership, your community dedication, and just encouraging the community to use their voices in so many different ways and so many different platforms. You're one of those people. I'm always like, he's there, and then he was there, and he was at that event, and he was speaking at this event, and he was coordinating this event. Like, you're just nonstop. And so we're very grateful for your leadership and, community advocacy. And that goes, to the both of you all. And so thank you all. Let's go ahead and show. We have a couple of responses. If anybody has any last minute ones, why are you voting in this election? I'd love to share them. These, were mentioned along with some of the themes that you all had shared. First, we have our dear brother Caleb T, who says, please vote.
Yes.
Simple, straight to the point. Please vote.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Caleb. And we had Biniam Mulana, who said, Black lives literally are existence.
Absolutely.
Say it louder. That is so true. And then we had another comment here who said they're voting. I'm voting so that Black lives can get the voice they deserve. Shorty. Thank you so much for that comment as well. I mean, you see these themes echoed, right, throughout our communities, because we realize that our lives are at stake. They are. And so I can't thank you all enough for coming on here. I just want to do a quick recap of some of the points that you mentioned, Olga, and we'll make sure to include this in the caption for anybody who needs more information on voting by mail, because I thought these tips were really, really great. And also, you can still, in some states, request an absentee ballot. It's very close to time, though, so be careful. It's a risk, right?
Yep.
It's a risk. So if you can, vote in person with PPE and all that. But if you can't, you can still request an absentee ballot. So we'll have information in the caption on how you can do that. You can just go to vote.org, access your election center, and you'll be able to do that. So we'll go ahead and show that on the screen here. So again, vote.org. So just a few points that were made. Go ahead.
Hey, Hannah, there's just one thing, and I hope you can touch on it in your closing as well, is encouraging people to not just vote once in the general election, but the most important voting is actually midterm. If you think about why Obama couldn't fulfill a lot of his promises, it's because in the midterm, hundreds of seats were lost. And the legislation that he wanted to pass couldn't because he lost Congress, right? And so I think it's really important for people to understand the three branches, right? If you are somebody who wants to institute law, you got to vote for the legislative, right? The Congress, and not just, at the federal level, but at the state as well, because they become really important. If you want to change something, especially in your district, you have to vote for those local elections. If you care about, social justice and systemic racism, the only way you change that is by also paying attention to the courts, looking at who are the attorney generals, because they're the ones that interpret and apply the law. And then finally, if you're looking for somebody that's going to guide the country and actually execute on those laws and executive orders and etc., that's where the presidency or even the governorship becomes really important, and mayors. So I think it's important for, if you could also elaborate more on this, is, understanding the three branches, knowing what level to vote, and don't just vote one, in general elections. That only has a very minimal impact. It is the midterms and the ongoing where the most power is actually gained.
Okay, that is a strong point right there. I'm so glad you brought that up. Brother Hayelom, that was a very important point. We can't just get excited about this November's election, as he said, because it's, presidents are on the ballot. We have to think about those local elections. We have to think about those statewide elections that are happening throughout the years, right? When we think about local elections, to your point, you have the district attorneys, you have judges, you have sheriffs. Many counties are currently about to vote in their new sheriff. Do you know what the sheriff controls?
Yes.
Sheriff, right? In Gwinnett County, that's a county voting on a new sheriff. That sheriff can decide whether or not they're going to continue having a relationship with ICE, who is doing just terrible things to the immigrant community. And so we want to see people come into those positions who are going to create solutions with humanity and empathy. Right. So we have the power to vote those people into place. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I thought that was a wonderful breakdown of the judicial, legislative, and then executive branch, because you just gonna need to go ahead and be a school teacher, because that was a great
So funny. I just have good people around me passing on information. That's all. Like my wife right here.
I just learned more in those 30 seconds than I did when I learned it in middle school, you know? So
well, that's what we had to do for citizenship.
We did.
Well, no, my parents did. Not us, but my parents, like, I mean, you'd be surprised. The folks that ended up, you know, getting their citizenship at an earlier age, after the age of 18, they knew a lot about this government. So yeah.
Y'all are the real ones, okay? The real ones. But no, I appreciate that. It's definitely, I love how you broke it down. It was simple, digestible. I'm actually going to take that clip and repost it and share it as well. We did have a couple of more comments that came in as far as why people are voting, so I just want to show those. Kathy Abraha says, I'm voting for my kids' future. That's beautiful. Of course, Sister Olga and Brother Hayelom are proud parents of 2 beautiful boys. So yes. They are, I'm sure, voting the same. And then we had Caleb T again, said, we are the majority, but if we're not able to make it out to vote, then we will not be properly represented.
This is true.
Very true.
Absolutely.
That's true. Speaking of being represented, y'all, make sure to fill out that census. We have until October 30th.
Absolutely. Yes. And by the way, this will be the last point. It was only because a friend of mine recently, who worked for a senator at a very profiled level, shared this one nugget. I never knew this. I mean, theoretically I did, but not in practice. And what he shared is that most individual senators and, you know, congressmen and women at that level typically only have about 200 to maybe 100 to 200 constituents who are the top donors. And that's who they listen to. When they call them, they pick it up and they make sure whatever they need and want passes. And the reason why that's important is because at that level, it becomes a game. Right? You have different people and who are we? Are we the pawns, or where do we live? And what part of the chess are we in, actually? And so when we think about that and we realize that, then it becomes even more important for us to, once we learn the game and we see it for what it is, then we realize, you know, the only way we can change that is, you know, those 200 cannot be more powerful than 10,000, than 100,000, than a million, right? And so I thought it was something that was recently shared with me a few weeks ago, and it was a really powerful message, and wanted to make sure people understood. You want to be more powerful than those 200, right? A million of us will be worth a lot more than, you know, $100,000 donations.
I know, and I do want to make a point about that as well, because when we think about donations, that's why when these candidates come out and say they're not taking any PAC money, that's why it's such a big deal, because they're not going to be tied to having to fulfill obligations and promises, you know. So whenever you see that, you know, whenever you see candidates saying not accepting PAC money, that's a pretty large accomplishment, and it speaks to the volume of how they're invested in the community, because they're not going to be tied down to people. So thank you for sharing that too. That's really important. I feel like we have so much we could talk about. I feel like we could be out here all night, but I don't want to keep you all, because, you know, we've had such a great discussion. I appreciate you all's time, but I just want to do a quick recap of some of the points that were made earlier. So again, this is about absentee ballots and voting by mail. And this is from our dear sister Olga here. She goes, if you are mailing in your ballot, remember to use all the envelopes that your ballot came with. Print your name exactly as it says on your ballot. Do not forget to sign. Postage is not needed if you are using a Dropbox, which you should try and use a Dropbox, because USPS is tripping. And if you are mailing, please do not wait. Do it ASAP. And remember, you do have to apply for an absentee ballot every single election, unless you are a senior citizen, as she mentioned. And there's plenty of other points that were made earlier on in this discussion. You can rewind and hear that if you came on the tail end. We do have a few more reasons why people are voting. So let's go ahead and show you all some of those. Mike said, who made a very important point right here, vote in every election. Yes. Right. And then we have, I can't read, I'm hiding into green. I'm so sorry, but you have a name here that we're so glad that you are here with us tonight. It is important to vote, and it doesn't necessarily vote Democrat or Republican. Your vote to parties who you share your values. That is important, right? I mean, whatever party you're on, just because they're on that same party don't mean they're for you. You really got to look at how they're voting in on policies and everything. Exactly. But generally speaking, I think a lot of times your values do align more with one side when you're generally speaking. So definitely important there. And then we had another person. I'm voting for my ancestors. Yes. Thank you. Isaiah Sium said, I vote so that I can have a say at our future. Amen to that. Sirak Abebe said, vote him out, my friends. Thank you for that comment. All the way from Canada. All the way from Canada.
That's funny.
Well, I'm good at it. Yeah, definitely do your research for sure about the people you're voting for and choose the candidates that share your values. Yeah, definitely. Kabere Abraha, follow up and check the status of your ballot. Definitely. I'm glad you brought that up because that is so important. You can go for Georgia fam, you can go on my voter page, which we shared a little bit earlier, and you can check the status of your ballot. It's super, super simple, and it'll allow you to keep up with the status. So please, 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 after you send it in, check it every day to make sure that you got it. So we're so glad you brought that up as well. And all right, those are all the comments for tonight. And we encourage you all to still comment. We can see them afterwards. And at this point, I just would love to give you all one last opportunity here to share any words of encouragement. There may be someone listening who doesn't feel, that it's important to vote, or maybe just continuing to encourage the community to get out there. What are your final words for tonight?
Final words, have a voting plan. We are 21 days, I think, away from the election. Know what you are voting for and who you are voting for. Definitely be informed on how they view certain issues, etc. And vote in person or ballot. Nothing is better than worse. But what is better is to do it as soon as you are able to. And finally, if you're going to vote in person, wear a mask, bring a chair, because voter suppression is real. As we've seen today, I think Marietta was 6 hours long. But yeah, that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think you've said it. I think it's just important. Your voice is so powerful, but your vote is even more powerful. So go out and help make the world in your image. And so know that people have sacrificed their lives for you. I think the least you can do is protect yourself and go and vote in what is best suited for you and your family. But I'm really excited. We have a chance. We have a chance to change the world for the better.
Yes.
Counting on you.
Let's go.
We have a chance to change the world for the better. Are y'all listening to this? Seriously, we have a chance to change the world for the better. We're going to end on that because that is so real. We have a chance right now. It's in our fingertips. All we have to do is vote for people who are going to change the world for the better. Yeah. And we got to just show up and show out. So thank you all so much. Can we all clap it up, everybody? You're in the chat. Go ahead. You can throw.
Thank you for everything that you do, Sister Hannah.
Thank you so much.
It is a pleasure to witness your journey, and it's just amazing. Yeah. I'm honored to have known you.
Yes. I'm honored to have known you all. And to everyone tuning in, I do just want to say you all saw our, we were very active over the summer leading protests in Atlanta. Our dear brother and sister right here were actually working behind the scenes as two of my advisors, in addition to a few other people. And so I'm thankful that you all were able to help guide us and give us that support behind the scenes that no one really sees and everything. So I just want to give you your flowers and say thank you for helping us lead those protests over the summer and being actively involved in so many different ways. And so as our sister Mavrat says, we clapping it up one more time for you all. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in, for being here with us tonight. We'll definitely be having more conversations like this. As always, sending you all a lot of love, peace, and positive vibes wherever you're tuning in from in this world. Much love, stay safe, and have a blessed night. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.